more over here. Yeah, and stay right in front of the camera, right? Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah. Don't move.
Yeah, that's about center right there. Yeah.
Okay. I have a tendency to move around, so I'll try to control it.
Oh no, you got. I just want to put the mic stand where you know. That's
Yeah,
what keep
right,
you there.
right,
That's the
right.
mic stand ain't gonna let you move too far.
Good.
You should have been able to hear all that. Yeah. 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 Yo, y'all, I'm pretty good. I'm just whenever y'all, I'm following you guys. You guys know the plan more than me. Whenever the switch is, I know when to switch for poetry and the movie. That's the only other thing. Two things. Poetry and movie.
We'll be starting in just a minute, so if people can take their seats. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Gabriel Meyer, the Executive Director of the Historic Ruskin Art Club, and we are here this evening at the Telescope Studio, a very exciting venue in the downtown LA Arts District, and delighted to be here. On this our fourth annual Ruskin Birthday Bash, celebrating the 204th birthday of the British art and social critic John Ruskin, born in London on February 8th, actually, February 8th, 1819, same year as Queen Victoria, and died at his estate in the Lake District in Brentwood on January the 20th, 1900, just at the birth of the new century. We really can't begin an evening with Ruskin without hearing from him. He would never forgive us. So I'm going to begin this evening with just a quote from Ruskin, referred to me by a friend of mine, Jim Spates, who was with us last year for this Ruskin Birthday Bash from Geneva, New York, a great American Ruskin scholar. And Jim, I hope Jim is on the live stream tonight tuning in, but I am tapping into a reading that he recommended today. It is of great consequence that you should fix in your mind, says Ruskin, and hold against the baseness of materialism on the one hand and the fallacies of controversial speculation on the other, the certain and practical sense of the word spirit. That sense in which you all know that its reality exists as the power which shaped you into your shape, and by which you love and hate when you have received that shape. You need not fear, on the other hand, on the one hand, either that the sculpting of this loving power can ever be beaten down by the philosophers into a metal or evolved by them into a gas. But on the other hand, do take care that you yourselves, in trying to elevate your conception of this word, do not lose its truth in a dream or even in a word. Indeed, beware always of contending for words, even if you know them in several languages. And then later on in the quote. What we assuredly know is that the states of life and death are opposed, and the first is more desirable than the other, and by effort attainable, whether we understand born of the Spirit to signify having the breath of heaven in our flesh, or its power in our hearts. And with that, I'm going to introduce our hosts for the evening, Chloe and Andrew Sapienza, who will add their word of welcome.
Gabe's taller than me. Don't mind if I do this. I'm just gonna leave it here. Thank you all so much for coming tonight, and thank you all for making the trip. We really, really appreciate it. You are in a space where things are done and made every day. And it's also a space that we can enjoy art. It's a space that we can learn. It's a space that we can help each other grow in whatever way we can. And I think that that's the thing that I most appreciate about John Ruskin. And I would hope, and you think? I would hope he would be happy that we were doing this for him 204 years later after he's born, you know? And I hope that he thinks that we're kind of operating in the way in which he kind of saw the world, because it's pretty cool. Chloe, do you want to say anything?
No, I mean, yes. Thank you guys for being here. We're delighted to have everyone in our space, and I really just want to let the programming do the speaking, and without much further ado, we will commence the music for this evening. Yeah.
Thank you.
For being here tonight. We're happy to share we're happy to share John Ruskin's 204th birthday with you this evening. We are the Zelter String Quartet. My name is Alan Hahn. I'm the cellist. I'm going to introduce my colleagues. This is Scalia Kastner and Kyle Gilner on the violin, and Carson Rick on the viola. We have for you tonight Haydn's 66th String Quartet. It's Opus 77, number 1, in G major. And it's a 4-movement work, and I'll let Carson talk about it in a little bit. But before we have that, we have an arrangement of a piece by John Ruskin, actually. It's titled At Marmion's Grave. He composed it originally for for voice and piano in 1881. And we've arranged it in a way where there's a gentle lullaby-esque melody played by the first violin, accompanied by gentle undulations by the rest of the strings. So without further ado, At Marmion's Grave.
been tasked with talking a little bit about the Haydn, so there you go. No, I'm just kidding. This piece is an interesting one in the sense that Haydn was commissioned originally by the Prince Lobkowitz, which is he's a Bohemian prince that also commissioned Beethoven as well. And this piece, he originally commissioned 6 string quartets. However, Haydn only finished 2 because he had become so precious about them. And what we see in this writing is actually the most detail-oriented that Haydn ever gets in his string quartet writing. And it's also a really great example of what we call high classical, sort of late period high classical music. And it's a wonderful piece to play. This is the first in G major, and we hope you enjoy it. Nothing we can do about that one.
Sorry. If you give me like 5 minutes, I can be right back.
So as you probably could tell, that violin part is crazy.
A lot of violin.
That she plays. It's a marathon. This is actually the first time that it's actually broken when we played, so yeah. She was putting in that work, so for you guys. You know.
What was going through my head is, will it be possible for us to go on and almost a
No, not at all.
No, it will not be possible.
Wow. That's so funny.
So,
Quick 5-minute drink break?
yeah.
Snack break?
Just a brief intermission.
No pressure.
Like the 16th time that's ever happened to me in my career. And it's always funny because when that happens, when I'm playing in an orchestra, no one knows what to do. But luckily in this setting, we'll just start from the beginning. Sorry about that.
I'm always struck by what poet John Keats said about Haydn. At a poignant moment when Rome died, he had, to distract him, he had his companion Joseph Severn, whose son married Ruskin's cousin. So it's all interconnected. Joseph Severn, he had to play Haydn piano sonatas for him to distract him during the last stages of tuberculosis. And Keats, Severn reports that Keats said to him, that Haydn, he's such a child, you never know what he's going to do next. Great. Well, we're clearing the stage of the rooms that might be too, or it's very good. Elena?
It's romantic lighting. Let's hope I can read. I'm Elena Karina Byrne, the literary programs director. It's a collaboration of sorts, but I've been with the Ruskin Art Club since 2002, and it's so exciting to see how we keep developing. I'm really happy to see this eclectic, wonderful audience. Thank you for being here. So I'm just going to try to give a quick introduction to the poem that I'm going to read, The Faithful Lover by Denise Levertov, which is about Ruskin. And I took some of Gabriel Meyer's notes. He said Ruskin's own voluminous verse, mostly written when he was a child, and even as the most fervent admirers would attest, merely serviceable. He went on to write, though, his true poetry in his prose. As majestic in its own way, Oscar Wilde would later claim, as the Turner landscapes it praises. Meyer reminds us that one of the inescapable tensions between nature and art and of modern and contemporary poets who find themselves walking with Ruskin, the title of Robert Cording's 2011 collection, and celebrating a Ruskinian sensibility in earthly details that can only be written by the senses. Or my friend Charlotte Inez's reading of Ruskin in Los Angeles, which I will introduce after this, with its evocation of a grandfather who perished in a German concentration camp, his sole legacy, a 1902 set of Ruskin's Stones of Venice. Not to mention the more indirect Ruskinian echoes in the modernist poetics of Marianne Moore, among many others, or in the work of the poet and farmer Wendell Berry, environmental advocate as well. Denise Levertov, 1923 to 1997, born and educated in Britain, came to the U.S. in 1948, where she associated with the Black Mountain poets like Charles Olson, Robert Duncan, etc., but from the beginning wrote with a remarkably individual voice about her evolving humanist, religious, and political commitments. And her Ruskin poem, A Faithful Lover, is all of that. But in imagining, whoa, and here I am, larger than life. Imagining Ruskin in the New World walking with John Muir in the wilderness, in Yosemite, in fact, it raises one of those essential issues in Ruskin's aesthetics, the confrontation of the tremendous, the numinous in nature, with Ruskin's attempts to capture its essence, to divine its deep structure in art. Not only in the rich symphonic music of prose that Oscar Wilde admired, but in the ephemeral medium of a sketch of like a watercolor. And with this in mind, we must include, finally, the dramatic industrial-based changes that Ruskin carefully observed and railed against, the changes happening to the air, the water, and the land around him, which, as you know, is still happening. So this is Denise Levertov, The Faithful Lover. Play with a few decades, shift them. Try to imagine Ruskin in the New World, walking with John Muir in the wilderness, he whose enraptured first sight of the Alps transformed him. That meek Protestant Sunday when he and Mama and Papa and dull cousin Mary were patiently waiting the secular weeks beginning before attempting the sights, but all unawares, came face to face with the sublime. Unmistakably not clouds surpassing that engravings had promised, floating west of Schaffenhausen, sharp tinged with rose, far into blue suddenly beyond, changed him from a docile prig, this is her words, poor child, he was 14 and knew so much and so little, to a man of passion, whatever his failings. Imagine him in Yosemite. Would loyalties already divided, rock simple or rock rot, strata of mountains, strata of human craft, tools of geology or tools of art, have split him? Would wilderness, legends unknown or known, offering no toehold for his mind's expectant footing, have swept him wholly into its torrent of non-human grandeur? Or wouldn't art have pulled him back to the end, to layered history felt in the bones, even geology, a fraction of that loved for its poetry of form, color, textures, not as a scientist loves it, back to where human hands created. Rich tessellations or the shadowy Rialto through its colossal curve slowly forth, that strange curve so delicate, so adamantine, strong as a mountain cavern, graceful as a bow just bent. Back to where nature, even the Alps, still so remote, unsung through so many centuries, lay in the net or the nest of perception, seen then re-seen, recognized, wrought in myth. Denise Levertov. So, Yeah, I've hidden her somewhere back there for a moment. Okay, I do want to bring someone who's alive and well today, and as I said, our dear long friend Charlotte Inez is the author of the chapbook 20 Pandemicals by Kelsey Books in 2021, and Descanso Drive, a book of poems, Kelsey Books 2017. She's also published 2 other poetry chapbooks, Reading Ruskin in Los Angeles and Licking the Serpent, both with Finishing Line Press. Her poems have appeared in many publications, including the Hudson Review, Rattle, the Sewanee Review, Tampa Review, Valparaiso Poetry Review, etc. Charlotte came to poetry late. However, she published her first poem in 2005 when she was 54, after a career as a newspaper reporter, much like our beloved Gabriel Meyer, who was a journalist and freelance writer and teacher. That first poem was, in fact, Reading Ruskin in Los Angeles, which appeared in the Hudson Review in an issue devoted to writers who had never published their chosen genres before. The poem was also selected for Best American Spiritual Writing in 2006 by Houghton Mifflin, and subsequently became the title poem of her first chapbook. So both reading and writing poetry were major discoveries for her. And she says they continue to be central in her life. She's also written books and the arts for many publications, including The Nation, Los Angeles Times, etc. And originally from England, I'm jealous, Charlotte Inez has now lived in Los Angeles for 34 years, and for most of that time in Silver Lake, which has been the inspiration for and the backdrop to many poems. Please give a warm welcome to Charlotte.
Oh, wow. I think does this sound good? Yes? Hooray. Okay. Thank you so much, Elena. Oh my gosh. And we have known each other a long time. It's so nice to do this. And this poem, as Elena said very well, it's just been sort of the blessed thing. It was the first poem I really wrote, actually, the first real poem. And it just went on doing all this different stuff and, appearing in this book and that book. And I'm going to read from my full-length book. It's also in here, called Descanso Drive, but it is the title poem of a chapbook as well. So reading Ruskin in Los Angeles, it has, Elena mentioned it, it has an epitaph for my grandfather, which kind of explains something about the poem, and the poem kind of hopefully has some spirit about him and also Ruskin. And let me just read the epigraph first. For my grandfather, Bernhard Einzig, 1874 to 1945, who died in a German concentration camp at Theresienstadt. His books, a 3-volume set of the 1902 edition of The Stones of Venice by John Ruskin, are my only tangible inheritance. The sun at its low winter zenith lights up the cross-hatched pane, the white curving fern, fossil-like, that might be an angry boy's knife etching, or painter's clumsy scratching at the spills and splashings of a makeshift paint job. Beyond the pane, a duller gleaming, drooping green acanthus leaves, symbol once in Christian art of heaven. Before that, classic curlicue of Greek and Roman art and architecture. Inside, a patch of sun pools on taut silk, old table lamp, red shade faded to brown, long, uneven drift of fringes also edged with light, cocked slightly, like a languorous woman with an age-old question, at dusk, a jaded invitation. Lamp, window pane, and tree, made things all, by God or man or woman, pulled together by the sun, my eye, my place. This accidental harmony of mismatched elements, what stories told here? There is no subject of thought more melancholy, more wonderful than the way in which God permits so often his best gifts to be trodden under foot of men, his richest treasures to be wasted by the moth. So, John Ruskin said, the fruit struck to the earth before its ripeness. Oh, excuse me. Oxford Don, who in the 1800s walked the streets of Venice, read its stones as if they lived, pondered natural beauty in translation. How to tell an Englishman who's never seen an olive tree of tracing, line by line, its gnarled writhing? Who held that art's a universal tongue, hated human cruelty, ugliness, and saw the truth of poor Italian peasants lounging jobless in old Venetian squares. John, you'd understand the awful beauty, the despair of windows, lamps, trees. Thank you.
Andrew, we're moving to the film, is that correct now? That's correct. Okay, very good. Okay, 2 minutes. Well, what I'll do in those 2 minutes is I will talk. Thank you so much, Elena and Charlotte, for bringing the word alive to us in a modern context. The film you're about to see, the short film, takes us in a very different direction. The area of South London called Camberwell was particularly ravaged by modern urban developers, as were many areas of London in the 60s. And a society was formed, the Camberwell Society, in 1970 to see what could be done to protect what was left in this now working class, ethnically mixed area of South London. Ruskin had lived in this area for most of his life, actually. His parents' house at Herne Hill and then later on in Denmark Hill was in this area at a time when this was a rural area on the outskirts of the city, a kind of idyllic part of London. Ruskin fled this area in the 1870s when the railroads went there. Ruskin could see what was going to happen with the railroads cutting through this rural district, and of course he was right. It immediately began to develop, and he fled to the Lake District, to Brentwood, even today fairly remote rural site on Lake Coniston. The houses that Ruskin lived in at Denmark Hill and Herne Hill were torn down in the 60s development, despite the historic plaques on them. However, this Camberwell Society began to do what they could to do two things: both save particularly what could be saved of the village green, vastly reduced from its size at one time, but nevertheless to preserve some real parkland in the area, and they called it Ruskin Park. And also then to feature Ruskin as one of the historical stars of the district, and perhaps attract again some more attention to the particular problems of South London. So this is a film that the Camberwell Society made in March of 2022, just last year. A brilliant idea, both a wonderful tour It's called A Tree Walk Through Ruskin Park with John Ruskin. So it has some wonderful footage of some incredible trees on the green and in the park, but in the course of which involves all sorts of folks from the neighborhood in reading excerpts from Ruskin or excerpts from works about Ruskin, and it just gives us a very different feel about the way in which Ruskin can affect people in what we might call ordinary circumstances today and engage with them. So this is, when we're ready to show it, a tree walk in Ruskin Park with John Ruskin.
It's entirely a blue screen film, and it's a test of what you see in the blue. No, just one more minute, please. Thank you.
Actually, we did a film like that once at the Huntington. We'd never seen it. It was sent to us from the Louvre, a film called Ruskin, and all we knew that it was about Ruskin in Venice. We'd never seen it. And we showed it at the conference, the William Morris conference, and the entire film, 45 minutes, was of a book opening and a hand turning pages. At the end of that film, a couple of people sent notes up to me, would I care to venture some comments on what the film meant? And I sent the note back, not on your life.
Welcome to Ruskin Park in South London, on the border of Camberwell and Herne Hill. Today we invite you to join us on a special walk around this beautiful green space to learn more about Ruskin and his philosophies on nature. We're going to stop at 6 points around the park where you'll hear local residents reading extracts from specially commissioned short essays. So without further ado, let's start our journey with an introduction to Ruskin written by Dr. Rachel Dickinson. John Ruskin was an influencer. Born in London in 1819, the same year as Queen Victoria, in his early 20s, he became famous as an art critic. Ruskin became increasingly aware of the effects of the industrializing world around him and the problems of his day. Unfair labor practices and low wages, no universal health care, pollution, and the destruction of nature. Whole communities growing up without fair access to education. The Victorians did not have social media, but Ruskin used technologies that were available: public letters, lectures, newspapers, books, and an efficient postal service to communicate his vision of a fairer society and a more beautiful world. He made a difference for the better. His ideas influenced the founders of the arts and crafts movement, the National Trust, and the early Labour Party. His ideas also rippled across the globe. Gandhi said, reading Ruskin's book, Unto This Last, brought about an instantaneous and practical transformation in my life, and therefore transformed India. Like Ruskin, we can connect with nature, starting here on our own doorstep. With these words by Rachel Dickinson fresh in our minds, join us for a walk with John Ruskin.
Blossoming Almond Trees by Alex Mayer. Almond trees were significant to John Ruskin and inspired his thinking. In his autobiography, in the chapter titled Herne Hill Almond Blossoms, he reflects on his youth and time spent in South London. For Ruskin, the blossoming of almond trees was the second joy of the calendar year, following on from the primary, if inferior, flowering of the snowdrops. The blossoming of almond trees, often only visible for 10 days, should remind us of Ruskin's advice to truly look, having fixed attention with both eyes and mind. Without intention or focus, a distraction, another call on our senses, or the casual decision to change our path, can mean we could pass by without noticing this harbinger of spring and of the comfort of the warmer months ahead.
Crafts and the Rural Idyll by Neil Sinden. From 2015 to 2017, I lived in Ruskin Land, surrounded by beautiful oak trees, wildflower meadows and orchards, some old, some recently planted. Ruskin Land was the heart of a utopian rural community based in the Wyre Forest in the Midlands. It was established by followers of John Ruskin in the late 19th century. So as Ruskin's life progressed, he became increasingly disturbed by the dehumanizing effects of rapid industrialization. And in seeking what ought to happen to address this, he was inspired by observing rural economies and the multiple crafts that they sustain. In the Wyre forests, such crafts included charcoal burners, sawyers, woodcutters, hauliers, hurdle makers, bark peelers, lath cleavers, gatherers and sellers of firewood, basket and besom makers, wheelwrights, coopers and carpenters. Ruskin's passion led him to found in 1871 the Guild of St. George, with its mission to promote the arts, crafts and rural environment. He influenced a revival in crafts not only in England but also internationally. The majestic Turkey oak tree, under which we are standing, with an intricate dedication to John Ruskin carved into its fallen branch, helps us to think how we could reinterpret his ideas about the rural economy and crafts to our current age.
Views by Dr. Mark Frost. During his lifetime, Ruskin witnessed transformation of this part of London from a semi-rural district to a suburban sprawl. The act of looking was immensely significant to Ruskin. Taking in a view was a means of understanding the world, and in particular, the interplay of nature and culture. For John Ruskin, nature was of unique importance in how it acted as a restorative and a form of hope. He said, to see clearly is poetry, prophecy, and religion all in one. His keen sensitivity to the effects of human life on a precious planet would inform his sight as he gazed from here onto those tall towers concerned with the onward march of modern civilization and consumerism. The complex challenges of today, climate change and resource depletion, would surely have accelerated his relentless quest to teach the benefits of an alternative and kinder ways of living. Perhaps he'll find comfort in this park, this oasis of green, continuing its helpful work. If we gaze with a Ruskinian eye over the world, we too can contribute to its restoration and endorse Ruskin's vital insight engraved on his bench, that there is no wealth but life.
The Alps by Andrew Hill. The Alps exerted a huge influence on John Ruskin's work. Before the age of 45, he claimed to have spent 11 summers and 2 winters there. They were a place for recreation, but also a great source of inspiration. He often passed 10 hours a day watching, drawing, painting, and comparing the skies, the streams, the flora, and the flow of glaciers. Ruskin's interest was more than aesthetic. The Alps were also a place for observation of nature and for pursuing his passion for geology. His work was even recommended by the president of the Geological Society. He connected the underlying structures of the mountains, for example, the layered masses of the Matterhorn, to architecture. And he observed how human industry was changing the Alps permanently. Recent study of the same glaciers that Ruskin chronicled has shown the extent of damage wrought by climate change. John Ruskin recognised that mountains and lakes are a place of interconnection between nature, art and the human race. We mess with those links at our peril.
Urban Sprawl by John Newman. Ruskin loved gardens. You can still trace the outline of garden walls of the houses demolished on the east side of Ruskin Park. Ruskin lived in 2 houses near here for over 60 years, first on Herne Hill and then on Denmark Hill, close to this spot. But the development of the area, the loss of fields, streams and hills, and the coming of railways and pollution saddened him. Ruskin's views made him a forerunner of today's concerned environmentalist. He was also an advocate for a revival in the Gothic style of architecture. But as Gothic became the style of choice for the suburban housing that was destroying the landscapes of his childhood, he came to loathe it. Finally, it forced him to leave South London for a new home, Brantwood, in the Lake District. Ruskin wrote, "I've had an indirect influence on nearly every cheap villa builder between here and Bromley. And one of my principal notions for leaving my present house is that it's surrounded everywhere by accursed Frankenstein monsters of, indirectly, my own making."
Drawing of Trees and Nature by Dr. Sarah Atwood. John Ruskin's writing spanned the broad range of his interests, from art and architecture to science, education, and political economy. Yet, at the heart of all he wrote and taught lay his firm belief in seeing clearly. As he declared in one of his books about nature, if you can paint one leaf, you can paint the world. The greatest benefit of drawing is not technical prowess, Ruskin thought, but spiritual transformation. Ruskin himself describes a revelatory experience in the forests of Fontainebleau, south of Paris, when in 1845 he was sketching an aspen tree. This produced in him a heightened awareness of the tree itself and an apprehension of the bond between the human mind and all visible things. Our modern lives are busy and at times anxious and isolated, especially during the years of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, more than ever, Ruskin's invitation to look closely and see clearly offers us a way of re-engaging with the natural world, of shifting our perspective and finding meaning in what we often overlook. We will not learn to care for nature until we know and love it. Reverence requires attention. We can start by opening our eyes.
In this fast-paced and uncertain world, it's easy to feel disconnected from the natural world around us. But Ruskin understood its deep importance to our well-being. She reminds us that there is no wealth but life. Life, including its powers of love, of joy, and of admiration. We invite you to visit Ruskin Park and do the walk for yourselves. But until then, next time you take a stroll in your local neighborhood, we hope you'll take some of John Ruskin's insights along with you too.
Conclude the formal part of our program. It's customary for us to have a toast to Mr. Ruskin. Andrew and Chloe, our hosts, are going to be doing that for us. I am now going to open some champagne, and there are other beverages available and let's all get something so that we can all toast Mr. Ruskin together on his 204th birthday.
You have available to you, grab it quickly and run back up here. You've got a little bit of time, but not much. So hurry. to those of you at home, we hope you've had enough time. Here at Telescope Studio, we're just about to make the toast, so please settle in.
I'd like to start by saying thank you to John Ruskin, and we've learned so much from the many events that the Ruskin Art Club has put on over the years, whether they be very specific events about architecture or very broad events that capture many disciplines, everything from ecology and environmentalism to art and business critical theory about how people are treated. It's just a wonderful range of philosophical topics that have helped fuel what we've done here at Telescope, where we are having this event. Andrew and I run a business together, and we try to follow Ruskinian principles with everything that we do. So having this event here is very special to us. Thank you guys so much for being here. We're thrilled. This is wonderful.
Cheers to Ruskin and to all of you here today, and I guess that's it. Happy birthday, John Ruskin. Cheers.